think we are live now, brother, but I'm going to ask
We are live.
someone to let me know if they can hear both of us.
All right. Check 1, 2.
Sorry, guys, if you're watching me type on my cell phone right now. I'm on here with Ben Johnson. We're going to have a pretty cool show tonight. Basically, no agenda whatsoever. It's going to be just stream of consciousness. We're having some difficulties getting everybody on the camera. I hope everybody is on the can hear Ben talk, and if somebody will let me know if they cannot hear you, that'd be great. Right now we have 0 viewers, so that's that. But I'm getting Andrew to check for us also.
Perfect.
If you hear us, so. I'm just gonna actually ask anybody in the whole damn caucus to do it too. Did you get that, Ben?
Yeah, it came through on my end.
So obviously, I can't look on my own Facebook page and tell if I can hear since.
Yeah, but I can probably check on mine, bud.
Probably not though, because we're the ones. I mean, you'll hear this audio.
I can check on my phone.
Oh yeah, I didn't think of that. Also, try that.
Check 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Did you get that, Ben? Yeah, it came through on my end.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's from what it sounds like, we're live, and I'm coming through on your speakers. I'm a little bassy, but you should be able to. Everyone out there in the interwebs and the World Wide Web and the world of Earth should be able to hear me now.
Sweet. Well, you're a little bassy anyway. That's just who you are, right? Hey,
I mean, I didn't think so, but I'm also partially deaf, so it's kind of hard to hear myself, you know.
Right. So this show's a little different than I've never done one with anyone before, and I want to welcome Ben Johnson here. Most of you who are watching this probably know him already, and if you don't, getting to know him is going to be one hell of a trip. We got a pretty cool announcement, I think, moving forward in just a little bit. Also, but a little background on Ben. I've known Ben probably a couple of years now, huh?
Coming up on 2 is right after I moved from Georgia. We synced up with our political aspirations with the caucus and whatnot, and I think actually my meeting with you and Anthony, and everybody was my first meeting with the group here in Alabama.
Right. So yeah, man, time flies. It doesn't feel like it's been 2 years. So
hell no.
You know. Yeah, it's been real cool. I don't want to. Lucky he's not. I couldn't get. We had some issues and couldn't get both of us on the camera for some reason. But so I can make him blush and you guys won't see. But working with Ben over the past couple of years has been a true honor. And people say these things when they're talking to people all the time, but there are a few people in the world, especially when you get our age and you get to be adults. There's very few people that you meet at this stage in life that you feel like you can really depend on and really count on. And I will say, we can both be loud, we can both be obnoxious, we can both be in your face and piss people off. But I think that anybody that knows you would say they always know exactly where you stand and where they stand with you. And I don't. That's a rare quality in a man. So I'm just. I feel honored that you even want to associate with me. And I guess the first thing I want to say is so. I haven't really figured out much what I'm going to do with this show yet. I'm probably going to keep it, but we're going to be moving forward doing a co-hosted show. We hadn't really worked out all the details except for we're going to do it, and it's going to be called No Treason. And I was listening to No Treason again on audio tape today, and I was like, wow, because we had been talking about, what should we name the podcast, and for the different reasons, you can go into why that matters if you want to, and and I was listening to, I read it probably 100,000 times, but I was listening to it on Audible just on the way back from Clinton earlier today, and I was like, wow, this is really us. This is why we should. I texted Ben, and Ben's like, "Oh, I love it." So anyway, we're going to be doing a new weekly show best we can. And anyway, you talk for a minute, Ben. I've been talking since we got on
Oh
here.
yeah, no. So like you said, we haven't really figured out where we're going with it. I'm still much further behind in my journey in the pursuit of liberty than Mike. Funny story about us meeting. One of I think it was the very first meeting I think I called you after, and I was like, man, I don't know about all this, not compromising. And, I think we got to take a more measured and stepped approach. And, what I've learned over the last 2 years is sometimes the truth has just got to hurt, you can't just spoon feed people and expect them to accept the reality that's in front of them. And honestly, that's how we got to where we're at today. People being spoon fed, people being coddled. Everyone believes what's on the news because why would the news lie to us, right?
Right.
And it turns into this perpetual self-licking ice cream cone of one day and one election cycle to the next and back and forth, and we just keep ebbing and flowing and getting further and further from what we were supposed to be.
Yeah, that's funny. I remember that call. I remember it vividly, actually. And no, I thought it was cool though because I appreciated the call in the beginning. I appreciated the just the hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is what's on my mind, and a lot of people don't take that. A lot of people just are like, I don't know if this is for me, and then walk away. They don't have the curious mind. A lot of people don't have the intellect to dive further into it and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Maybe this isn't for me, but I'm willing to talk to you. And you were, and you happened to catch me at a real good time because I like to think that I'm a practical man, and I like to think that that my if I have any good qualities, I like to think that it's my reasoning ability is up there, and so it's not that I don't believe in compromise or steps, but you caught me when I was able to really precisely explain what I meant by that. And I think it's important, even now. Like, actually, I'm glad you brought that up because it gives me the opportunity to talk about the extreme messaging and the debate on both sides of that. And actually, it goes back to a conversation that you guys were having the other night on the after the EC meeting, and I wanted so badly. I had so much that I was trying to say, and I was driving. I was going through these bad areas, and I'm on this medicine right now, and so my thoughts they go in and out, and I can get them out sometimes really quick and succinctly and intelligibly, and sometimes I can't get them out at all. They just don't go from here to here. Hopefully that'll be over in a couple of weeks. But the other night, you guys were saying you were in this in-depth conversation of anarchism versus minarchism, and there was a lot I really wanted to get into that. And I just couldn't. I couldn't get either. When I had something to say, I couldn't get my microphone to work, and when I could get my microphone to work, I couldn't get my words out. But it doesn't really matter in the end if we're if I'm an anarchist and you're a minarchist because we're so far away from both. Like we can agree that we
100%.
we need to get to, if we get to what a minarchist says is where we can argue about who's the good guy and the bad guy. Then we're so far away from it, it doesn't matter. But I think that my argument on anarchism is I want to start from the furthest point away from where we are right now. The other argument is, which someone said the other night, we're in anarchy. Anarchy, we just have chosen to get to this point. This is what really we started from a minarchist point that got us to this point. We started with the Constitution, right? And then it just grew and grew and grew as government does, like a weed. So I want to start from as far away from that as possible. And if it grows into this, sure. And my reason for saying that and bringing it all back around is when it comes to messaging, I want to start from, for so long we've been told we need to argue inside of this little box, right? like you don't want to say abolish the IRS or abolish the Department of Education because you're going to scare people off. People don't want to hear that, and you need to attract people, and you need to explain to them with reason.
Yep.
And you've been told if you say anything outside of that, that you're crazy and you're going to be painted as crazy. Well, what's happened is that Overton window has just kept gradually moving to one side. So now, if you say that people born with a penis are boys, then you're extreme and you're crazy. I mean, it's gone this, it's nudged and nudged
Oh
and
yeah, no,
nudged.
100%. And
So
I mean, that's not even like out on the fringes anymore. I mean, you've
right,
got Daily Wire right up the road in Nashville with Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh. And I mean, they had. Are you familiar with the
yeah,
events in Loudoun? What was that? Loudoun County, Virginia, I think it was. It was late last year with the whole self-identifying whatever
no.
boy or whatever it was.
Oh, and the restroom at school.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
the dad's daughter literally got raped in
Raped.
the bathroom,
Yeah, the
and
son.
the principal called him and was like, "Hey, we've had an issue. We need you to come into school." And the dad gets there, and it's
He ended up.
like there's yeah,
They
like
arrested the dad at a school board meeting.
yeah, and that's what started that
Yeah,
whole FBI calling parents domestic terrorists.
yeah.
And what was so funny about that, and I'm actually kind of glad we're probably just going to keep going in circles tonight the way me and Mike talk. For those of you that don't know, but it's funny not funny. That's not funny at all. But the fact that we kind of ended up back to the point of the mainstream media and the fact of lack of education and whatnot, that people just not understanding things. All everybody thought of that when you saw the mainstream media news in the months that followed that was parents were domestic terrorists because they were terrorizing school boards over critical
Right.
race theory. It was nothing about what actually started it,
Exactly.
because why would we put the truth out there? You know what I mean? Like, what is the motivation to have truth out there? It's all about the messaging, the narrative, the clicks, the likes, the funding, and who they're going to donate money to. So, and where that money's coming from. But not like it matters. Money printer go brr.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true though. But so if by being able to paint the narrative of what you're allowed to talk about, they're allowed to move it to that point. Though that's how we
hundred
got to
percent.
that point. Is they control language and they control the argument, and they're still trying to do it. And that's why I think when people say, "Hey, you don't want to say these extreme things," that the different parties are saying right now, the different wild things out there. Hey, you don't want to say that because we're not gonna turn people off. What their job is, they're provocateurs. Their job is to say the extreme things to, and then our job is to explain what those extreme things really mean. So, and I'm using this, like you say, you don't want to start at I want to start at anarchism because it's the furthest away from where we are. I want to start with, hey, we need to break the whole fucking system down. Say, and I just mean in messaging wise. Hey, we need to destroy the whole system so that maybe we can compromise a little bit on this side instead. Other people need to be doing the compromising in the middle, and it needs to start dragging this way. So, in order to get you to compromise, it used to be I offer you $10, you want $100, we'll settle somewhere around $40, $50. Well,
Yep.
now it's, hey, I'm offering you $80, and they're like, no, I want 110. So we have to start back at the other side, and I have to offer you a
Yep.
nickel, man, and that nickel's just so we can talk.
Yep. And you can't. And I mean, and you've heard me on politics before. I forget what discussion or meeting it was in. Well, hey, who are you got any money to donate? Hell no, because money don't belong in politics.
Right.
Period. At all. Like, that's a principle. And I mean, honestly, I think a lot of it just comes down to people lack principles in today's world. I mean, they don't have anything to stand behind
Yeah, man, I'm so glad you
or
brought.
stand on.
No, I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm gonna take a quick break real quick because I need to get a drink of water because I guess I should explain to everybody about this. So I have I guess Lyme disease. It's the labs. I thought they come back Friday, but they actually come back tomorrow. So I've been kind of up and down for the past couple of weeks, and my mind has been coming. One of the symptoms of that is it kind of comes and goes. So I apologize, and I appreciate the Ben's here to kind of keep me on track. But my throat's getting a little dry, so I'm gonna take a 5-second break, and then I want to. What you just said brings us back to what we were originally talking about last night, and how you texted me and how we got to this point and decided to do the show. So if you'll remind me when I get back, that's what we're talking about. And you talk about anything in the meantime you want to. I'm just gonna go get some
Yeah.
water. All right.
All right. So for those of you that followed Mike, you got a little bit on how we met. I'll go ahead and give you my intro. I probably should have started with that, but we're not exactly the most plan oriented people sometimes, and me and Mike can just talk for hours. So a little bit about me, my background. Army vet, did almost 2 decades in the service, and COVID really kind of was the end of it for me. I actually ended my time in service during COVID in 2020. So a little bit with that, I didn't make it to retirement, and I was at a point physically where my body just couldn't hack it anymore, and the Army, was gracious enough to let me go on my way without destroying my body any further. So thank you for that, appreciate it. Here we are today, and obviously gotten pretty involved with politics. Here helping run the Libertarian Party of Alabama, and get so hopefully get some of our 60 plus candidates elected this year, which is how we got along, or actually got synced up like we were talking about. Originally, I was born and raised in Ohio. I told my family one of the biggest reasons I'll never move back was what I saw happen from our government in my home state, Daddy DeWine. He just shutting down bars, shutting down businesses. And although that happened a little bit down, as some would say, south of the Mason-Dixon, it didn't happen as much. We had a little 2 weeks at home, maybe 3 weeks, 3, 4 weeks, depending on the state. And after that, most people down here in the South were like, we're over it. So that was a huge deciding factor for me when I got out of the military. My parents also live not far down the road. My dad retired from the police department years ago, and so staying kind of close to them with my kids, their grandkids, was also kind of important. So, with that, that's just a little bit about my background. I all over the world all the time doing God knows what. And when I'm not traveling, I am hanging out with my kids. I love duck hunting. There's one thing in the world I love. It's more, not more than, but almost as much as my kids and my wife. It's 100%. I love duck hunting. Deer hunting's all right. It just is boring to me. So for any of you who might have had any questions, that's a little bit about my background and what I'm all about. But bottom line is just fed up with the bullshit, fed up with the system, and I want to see a world set free. I don't want my daughters, paying a 60% tax like we were when the Fed and came off the gold standard under Nixon. I don't want to see that type of world for my kids. I want to see at least something left of where we're at now, and not further off down the road, and not left or right in politics, but left of bang, for those of you who understand the military references. But anywho, so what do you got next there?
Man, you covered the realm there. You went from how you from where you were born at, where you came to duck hunting to, man, that was a journey. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
That took a little skill. I I think
Get
that
used to it.
what I so what we originally started talking about, like I put out the little teaser that I put out, the 1 minute reel or whatever, about my journey, which was as a kid, I was raised by my grandparents, right? And mom was real young. She was 16. I didn't know my dad. And I think when you're born sort of like I was, you come into it. You probably come into it with a little bit of a self-esteem or some abandonment issues or whatever, just because, just nature, nature, you're supposed to have a mom and a dad, blah, blah, blah. And I was loved. My granddad was the greatest man in the world, so I don't ever want to put anything like that. But I think I sort of was battling that for a long time. And I always tried to be something that I wasn't. I always wanted to. If I had friends, I probably thought something was wrong with my friends. If I always wanted something that I didn't have, and I always wanted to be appreciated in a way that I felt I wasn't, and I always wanted to present to the world something that, I thought I was going to be a rock star. I thought I was going to, my goal was to get as fucked up as I could possibly get, and make as many people love me as they could possibly, what I thought was love, make them love me, and then die at 27 years old, like all the great rock stars. That's what I thought you were supposed to do.
Hell yeah.
And
Smoking in the boys' room and the old days of big hair bands and shit, yes.
that's just what I thought it was. And, I think about it now and it's sad. It's really sad because there was a lot of authentic relationships, a lot of people that came in and out that that, I could have, if I had have just took the time to really be like what I was, like look at my own talents and thought that I was good enough, thought whatever, just knowing that I was good enough, and like I'm passionate about this. I'm passionate about doing this and talking about politics and
Yep.
being a revolutionary. Those things are like liberty is something I know a lot about. I've studied. I spend all my free time doing. It's something that I'm really passionate about doing. I pick up that guitar when I get bored, and I still can't play the motherfucker. I was never going to be a rock star.
Don't
There
feel
was
bad. I
yeah,
can't. I've had one for 4 years or
right.
8 years now.
Yeah, but I was never. I don't want to say taught because like my granddad's not like, hey, you need to learn to be yourself. My granddad's just like, hey, people are themselves. It wasn't a thing that he didn't teach me. But I was raised by the media and I was raised by Hollywood, and I got to thinking about this when I put that out yesterday. I was 40 years old when I really came to terms and really found myself and when I did, man, when I let go and I was like, okay, this is who I am and this is what I want to be. All of a sudden, the whole world changed for me, like the whole world changed. I do whatever I want to, whenever I want to do it, with very little. Really nothing. I do what I want to when I want to do it. I buy a fucking ranch. I live the dream. Like this is anybody that
Yep.
has ever. It's what I 3, 4,
Oh,
5
I've
years.
told you if I would have planned better, I'd love to live your life, man. That's just
It's
which is
ins.
funny story.
Go ahead.
Um, Not to cut you off,
No, go
but
ahead.
my uncle always gives me shit every time I come home. He's like, "When you were younger, all you could think about was leaving this old farm town, and you were gonna go, and you were gonna, be this big shot out in California or New York City, and you couldn't look back." And here I am now, 35, and I'm like, bro, I would kill to have 100 acres and
Right.
have a house smack dab in the middle of it, just away from people, and live my life the way I see fit.
I know how that
So,
is. So when I was in California, so when I was growing up, we had to cut firewood and all this, and I hated it. I hated having to do all the chores. I had to do all the stuff that I do now because I love to do it. I hated it so much. And then I moved to LA and I was like, fuck, man, I wish that I had some firewood. And it just came back. Like, I know exactly
yep.
what you're saying. It's just because I actually left and then I was like, well, fuck, I missed that. But um, I was going somewhere and I completely just got
Yeah. So
lost.
finding yourself, kind of like we were talking
Yeah.
about a little bit last night. That was kind of the motivation for your show. And then we talked, and you were like, bro, you need to come on and we need to talk. So I'll open
Wait,
this part of the
before you get to that, I want to go somewhere. I know where I was
Oh,
going.
100%.
Yeah, I want
Sure.
to go somewhere with that. So, my point is, I'm not a guy that's going to indulge in a lot of conspiracy theories, and it's not because I don't think there's any validity to them. It's because we know for a fact what the government does is like we know enough verifiable. We don't have to argue and be called tinfoil hat wearers because they just the verifiable things that they have done. There's enough government atrocity that I don't really get into the weeds of the conspiracy theories. That's for someone else. I don't mind if you do. I know I'm talking about you. I don't mind if anybody listening does. That's neither here nor
Yeah.
there. But I always stick straight to the facts of, hey, well, the government actually did this. Maybe they did that. Maybe they didn't do that. But this conspiracy theory that I came across, if I were going to, if I wanted to weaken a society, if I wanted to weaken a people, because if you look back all throughout American history, we've been a strong, proud, free, loving people, right? We, they,
I mean, we were called the melting pot
yeah,
for a reason.
Japan wouldn't invade us because of behind every blade of grass there's a gun, right? So
Yep.
if you wanted to change that, if you wanted to soften a people, get them where they would turn away their guns, the way you would do that, you would go about destroying the family, and you would go about convincing people to destroy themselves. You would go about glamorizing. You would glamorize sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You would make that live fast, die young.
Oh, you mean MTV in the early 90s?
If and that's and if you look at like okay, movies in the 50s, for instance, they were just cowboy movies, right? Then the guy was
Yep.
strong and he came out with his gun and he saved and everybody rallied behind him. And then as you look, and I like I love counterculture movies and counterculture art and that sort of thing. But there was a definite shift and a definite focus, really after the counterculture in the '60s. Really after there was a really like a definitive shift in all media to sort of weaken the man, to make the man what was once the strong, proud man, to make him not sexualized and glamorized anymore, but to make the guy that can't control himself, the guy that's going to get fucked up, falling down drunk, the guy that's the live fast, die young, to glamorize that. And so I think, again, I'm not going to say it was a concerted effort between government and media and art to kill the American man, but if there was, if they wanted to do that, it would have perfectly succeeded and got us to where we were at. And that's what I've been trying to get at and explain. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense to you or not.
Yeah, no, and that's a very fine line when you're discussing these topics, like between, you're a conspiracy theorist. Like, no, I know the Tuskegee experiment happened.
Right.
Like it was classified for a while. The government declassified. It happened. Like the government injected people with syphilis to see the effects. Like it's not unknown. Like it is public record at this point. Like, oh no, you read too many books.
Right.
You go put your tinfoil. It's like, and people. Most people, they won't, like, they don't even know some of the
You're right.
horrible things. I mean, MK Ultra. I mean, there were so many things that have happened in the history of our country, and I think you hit on a really good point there. Because after the '50s and after the '60s, obviously neither of us were alive, so we can only go with what we've read,
Right.
and but there's a lot of books and people from back then that you're not taught in school, and as you get older and you start learning more things and exposing yourself to different content, you hear about those books, and you get piqued, and piques your interest, and you start getting curious, and that's where the line becomes for a lot of people, at least I think, where it's conspiracy, but it's not. Like, there are things that we know happen, and then there's the people that see the coincidences, and they go like way the hell out into left field with it, and they're like, there is no way that this person and that person could be elected to this office and in charge of this business and do all this, and it's like I mean.
And you know what they are? They are they are controlled opposition, because so if everything's a conspiracy theory, like if everything's a conspiracy theory, then nothing is a conspiracy theory, right?
Exactly.
So
just like if everything's a priority in a workplace, nothing's a priority.
That's exactly right. So so when you have, for the longest time, and libertarians have finally made it to the point where I would say not everybody that walks around the street would say, hey, those are a bunch of kooky libertarians. But for the longest time, we were.
Some of us are.
Some of us just walk around with boots on our head, though. And anyway, we finally made it past that. But that image was. It was effective. It was, and I believe, I don't say they're controlled opposition. I don't think they're CIA plants walking around. I mean, I think some on social media that are like, hey, this, that, and the other. And, I think some of those are. But a lot of times you get them and you get the right people. You plant what you want to in their head, and then they run with it, and then they're all over the place, and then they represent a movement. So being able to separate from that, and then, like you say, MK Ultra, the Tuskegee experiments, just being able to say, well, this is, yeah, maybe, but this really happened, and then they'll say, a lot of times the uninformed person, though, they'll say, you can tell them what really happened, and they'll put you in the same boat as someone over there trying to tell you that that they're whatever crazy shit you want to say, that we're with them.
They control the weather with chemtrails.
Exactly. I'm trying not to. There's a lot that keep popping into my head. And I said, well, you know what? I'm not trying to fight with anybody about that shit.
What was it? I think it was UAE, or there's some Middle Eastern country that they're doing electrolysis to increase the rain and the moisture in their environment over there. Like, they're literally electrolyzing, or shooting electric bolts between 2 points in the middle of the air to cause clouds to form to create rain. Mm-hmm. Like, is it possible? I mean, shit, it's 2022.
Right.
God only knows what's possible.
Right.
I mean, but is it likely? What's the point? What's the end state? What's the game? What's the end game for someone doing it? And that's a question that you got to ask with all of it. Like, what would someone stand to benefit and do? And that's what gives you the insight that I think makes a difference for a lot of people in their decision making processes.
Yeah, you're right. No, you're absolutely right. It's funny. I was thinking the other day, going back to this topic, I was thinking the other day about why we don't have flying cars. I was thinking, back when before we were kids, even and I'm a little older than you, so before I was a kid, even back when I was a kid, and when you were a kid, and back when my mom was a kid, even. So you have the Jetsons, you have this. You're going to have flying cars in
Oh,
2000, and they really
yep.
believed that. They really believed back in the 50s and the 60s that by 2000, and we did, that we would
Oh, for
have
sure.
flying cars. And I think the reason they really believed that is because if you look at how far society jumped from even 1800 to 1900, but definitely from 1900 to 1950. So we went from say just from 1860 to 1960. Take that 100-year period, that century, right? We
Okay.
we went and we went. We have electricity from nothing. We have
Yep.
indoor with plumbing. We have railroads. We have cars. We have all this huge. We can pick up something and I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about in 1960 versus 1860. We could pick
Yep.
up something and talk to somebody 1,000 miles away. We could do like that stuff. Seems like if you put yourself as a somebody on the Oregon Trail, that stuff seems sci-fi. That's something so
I
outrageous.
loved that game as a kid. That
I
was my
know, right?
dream.
Um, but we were so innovative because the private sector allowed us to be so innovative. There was
Yep.
so much competition that went on there. And it wasn't a bunch of bullshit. Like people did what they wanted to do, and the people that cared about science and they went out and the innovators they went out and they invented. They did these things, and then so there's a real reason to believe we probably would be so much more advanced. But somewhere we hit that wall where it went from being productive and I said masculine. It went from being all that to hey, concentrate on this other bullshit and argue about this bullshit. And so then everything started being scrambling. And so we went from trying to invent electricity and making the world a better place to trying to do studies on what sort of sexual preferences frogs have. And so it's it's not,
I didn't know that existed, but I'm not
oh,
surprised.
it did. No, I'm not even joking. I'm not even joking.
Oh,
The
I know you're not.
Yeah,
That's why I'm laughing.
yeah.
I hadn't heard that one, but I have no doubt in my mind that it was done. There's probably 5 follow-up studies after it.
The government granted several $100,000, maybe even millions, but I don't want to exaggerate. I don't remember the exact number, but a lot of money to do on the sexual orientation of frogs, and this is in just a few years ago. So I mean the things we could have achieved versus what actually got achieved, it changed when sort of when the world like men had to fight to survive. You had to fight and I don't mean fist fight, but you had to sort of fight the elements and brave. And we got
Oh
to
yeah.
we got to a point where we became so comfortable that our comfort was our enemy because we became so comfortable that humans need something to overcome, right? And
Always.
we need something to rebel against too. And when we've overcame the elements, we live in these comfortable houses that are climate controlled. We've basically mastered weather. I mean, not in real life, but in our minds and the way we get to live, we've mastered weather. We've done all these things, so we have nothing to overcome anymore, nothing to fight against anymore. And then, so now it's a culture war, and we're rebelling. We're rebelling to be able to speak freely, to be able to do these things that are really, really good things. But we win these things. So then kids come along, the next generation comes along, and they're extremely comfortable. And the previous generation has fighting all the real fights for them, so they don't really have anything to rebel against anymore. Like a black person in the 40s and 50s, like that really experienced real, true, hard racism, right? Or an immigrant, a
Oh,
first
for sure.
generation immigrant that came over there that really experienced real, true, hard versus now where the thing like we've had black presidents, we've had these. If you take that person from 1938, that black guy on the street, and put him here and let him look at this black kid here who's crying that he's being discriminated against. This one from a long time ago would hit this one. I'm not arguing
Yep.
that discrimination doesn't exist. That's not my point. My point is that the rebellion thing has gone so far away that
Well, it's a scale. I hate to equate it to like an economy of scale, but I mean,
it is.
it is. We've gone from our lives were hard we had to, struggle to provide food. We had to struggle to do whatever, and everything was a struggle in the 1800s. I mean, you didn't boil your water from the river, you're going to get
Right.
dysentery, man. Like, I mean, that was how we lived. And you fast forward 100 years, like you said, we've mastered weather. You've got a safe place. You don't have to walk anywhere if you don't want. Most people can afford a car. I mean, in 1960, I would guess the median cost of a house was what, probably 10K for like a mansion, something that was a couple thousand square foot, right?
Right.
Like probably what Rockefeller lived in back then with the oil booms and shit.
Yeah.
But
Right.
you know, and so when you look at the scale of how we've progressed as a civilization, how we've progressed as a society, everything in that society is going to shift in conjunction with that shift of lifestyle. And that point where you were talking about where we transitioned from that, I think that's a key point. That it is 100% up for debate. Was that the implementation of the Federal Reserve in 1913? Was that our involvements in the World War? Or was it the Civil War that kind of put us on this path? At what point did we get off that track where we were just such an inventive and amazing, knowledgeable, smart society? I'm not even not calling it a country, just a group of people.
Yeah. It's
Because
human. Yeah.
and so what did us for that, took us off that path. Obviously, for hypothetically, it was the Civil War. If that's what took us off the path, great. Then that's what it was. Obviously, there was that, 50, 60 years of in-betweenism before we got to this corporatist, interventionist type, government ran society that we have nowadays.
Right.
And that really pulls everything back. And I mean, even with, like we talk about with the no treason at the beginning, liberalism. You've heard me say it and talk to some people around with the party, like it was an eye opening book for me, listening to Mises talk about how the basis of liberty is the private ownership of property and production. Like, if you don't own what you produce, then you don't own anything and you're not free.
Right.
Like, I mean, and then we had this debate, actually in our talk that we were talking about,
Yeah.
it was Sunday or Monday, that, okay, well, if someone voluntarily chooses to live in a commune, that's not a problem. No, it's not. But when you live in a commune or you choose to live that lifestyle, you're putting communal work and communal property ahead of self, which is, albeit, good on you, man. Like, not me, I'm not that way. But if I build a hammer out of, raw materials
Right.
in that commune, and, my kid gets in a fight with your kid, and now we get in a fight, and I'm like, this commune, I'm out.
Right.
I can't take my hammer. I can't take the food that I've produced on the land that I've had in that commune, because it doesn't belong to me. I have no choice. I'm now tied into a situation that I don't want to be in, or I have to take my family and now go to what? You know what I mean?
I think there's actually. I'm glad you brought that up. I really am glad you brought that up. I think there's two ways of looking at that, because I don't necessarily, based on exactly what you just said in that very strict definition, I do. But I think, like, let's say I wanted to start a commune here, right?
Yep.
And I would do it, if I were going to do that. I would do it as a buy-in. I would, you come in, you have access to this. We're going to grow this. We're going to do this, whatever, blah 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 blah. But you can do that. You can do that society. You can do that community where we're all going to put in for the greater good. We're all going to put in for food, whatever. We're going to make our own tools, or we're going to bring our own things to the table. But
Yep.
you can do that so as also you can leave with what you came with, or you can leave with what you brought to it, not the food, but your hammer, your tool. You can do that because you're still exchanging. Where I think the difference is, you can't do it on an economy of scale. You can't do it like you can't do it as America, or you can't do it as even a city, and you can't do it where there's any sort of you have to stay, or you have to do this X amount of things. But as far as a voluntary society, even on a communal basis goes, I think you can do it because you're still trading, you're volunteering to trade your labor for in exchange of goods. So even though it's not normally, I'm going to pay you $10 an hour to do this, it's not that exact exchange.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that it's not currency, but you're still exchange. It's just a barter system. So
Yeah.
you can still have a commune and it still be capitalism. Either you can have a capitalist society, you can have communist capitalism in a 10-person whatever that small family. You have it at your house. I mean, you,
Yeah.
your wife, and your kids. You have that system. It's just that system
Well,
can't be one
my
that
daughter thinks it's her world.
right. And it probably is. It probably is because somebody is actually the boss of those things. Somebody actually,
Yeah.
and it's probably her because she's what, 2?
So 6 and 1,
Six
or
and one.
1.5 now.
Wow. Yeah. So their 6-year-old is the boss, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the same thing. It'd be the same thing on a commune. It's just how advanced can you get that, and that's where the the libertarian socialists that come into this. That's where they have the right idea. Like a lot of them will be like, well, Spooner was a communist. Spooner wasn't a socialist in that way. Spooner believed in. He didn't believe in corporations. He didn't say that they shouldn't either. He founded a private company that competed against the post office. But they want to make it. But what Spooner did believe is that you shouldn't transfer the power from government to corporate. That you should transfer the power from government to you. But he wasn't saying abolish money and abolish that you can't exchange your labor. He wanted you to be self-employed. Was really what the libertarian socialists don't want to admit. He wanted you to exchange it from instead of a communal we all own it, because we all own it means really whoever manages it owns it. That's the person. You just are transferring the role of dictator or president, whatever you want to do, to manager of the commune. But it's something that's not everybody's. They don't want to recognize, and they don't get it when they say they want to take something that can work as a very small thing and try to it's not that they're being dishonest. I just think they really don't understand that that the founding anarchists, the founding libertarians, when they talked about socialism in that way, they didn't mean socialism as a means of, or anarchy as a means of governing America by you have to be for, because that's not anarchy. That's still force. Even though the original ones were more like, say, a tribe, an Indian, a Native American tribe or something, where they believed in sharing the land. They believed in sharing the goods and working with it. They also believed in it as a measure of voluntarism, as a voluntary trade. And that's the hard thing to get when you get with someone who's real left libertarian, because when you start anything that's free market to them, they think in okay, well, you're just trying to trade your rights to General Electric or some bullshit like that.
Yeah.
And that's not really it. What we're all really trying to do is transfer our rights back to the most local source possible, which is the individual.
Exactly. Well, and it's like anyone who says they're against capitalism because it's clearly failed. Like probably the meme that makes me laugh every time someone shares it from their memory from like 5 years ago is,
right.
You got that chick. She's in like I think it's an airport,
with the laptop,
and it says "Smash Capitalism." She got this big ass Grande Venti fucking whatever Starbucks shit, and her $1,300 Mac pad, and I'm like. Like you don't even get it. Like what we live in is not a capitalist society anymore. It is 100% an interventionist, government-ran, sponsored by corporate.
What's funny
that's all it is.
What's funny is it actually is fascism. It's the true definition of fascism's a new buzzword. They have people who say you're fascist. They have no idea what fascist means. But we've been living in a true fascist society for all of our lives, like all of our lives. This corporatism. Mussolini's the one that said it, that fascism should be really called corporatism. And that's what it is. That's what our society has been. We've lived in a manner all of our lives, and really even before that. In fact, it's never been a true free market from just from the beginning of time. It hasn't been a true free market.
I mean, maybe when we were Confederate States and everything.
Even then, it wasn't a true free market, but it started at something that was the freest that society could ever imagine, and it grew into such a beautiful, great, grand thing that everybody was like, "This is what's amazing is people don't care about history. Like they don't care at all. They don't care. Like people want to say, oh, if you want to if you don't like government, go live in Somalia." but they don't understand the rate of growth in Somalia. So it all is from a starting point. It's like, okay, if you start from nothing in a rubble and pirates and chaos everywhere and war torn, and you have nothing in front of you, then you're going to have to, as society develops, like kids are going to have to work, just like they did in early America, just like they do in China.
Yeah.
Kids are going to have to work. It's just a necessity of life, and it's not has nothing to do with if there's any government. It could be the most oppressive government in the world. It could be complete anarchy. It doesn't matter. Those things are happening just because of what your starting point is. So so child labor laws, those sort of things that we enjoy here, and all those things that we enjoy here, we enjoy because we started at that awful Somalia point and grew and grew and grew. Because when we came here and it was just a wild jungle. We started and then we went through fought a revolution, right? We fought a whole revolution and started this whole new country. So we started at the infancy. We were nothing. We started this infancy and we
Yep.
grew and we had all the bad things that developing nations have, no matter what their government is. So when they say
Yep.
go to Somalia, Somalia's rate of growth from the time like any really has been phenomenal. Somalia's rate of growth and level of civilization. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, and I don't want to lie about it, but it's you can look it up though. This is what it is from the point that has just been super phenomenal. And what happens when a society develops is you have the comfort that we were talking about earlier. So you can say, okay, well, kids don't need to go to work. It would be better for society long term if kids didn't work and they went to school. And then so you start changing these things and changing these things and having this better standard of living. So if you start at a true limited government, you can say minarchist, anarchist, whatever. But if you start at this point with the technology that we have today, the under the grid, that just the conveniences, the comfort, the understanding that life is cool if I can go and give you a couple of dollars and you give me an ice cream cone and neither one of us have to die over it. Like just from the
Yep.
understanding of the way the world is and the infrastructure that's built in that actually didn't start by government. That interstate argument the other night really was one I wanted to get onto because I wrote a whole damn essay that actually started this whole thing about
Yeah.
how the road system got started. Who built
Yeah.
the
And
roads.
correct me if I'm wrong. The interstate system we enjoy today, that was under FDR, and FDR, he wasn't thinking about improving commerce. It was a military thing. It was
Yeah,
improving logistics to defend the country in a time of war if we were ever invaded. Like
exactly.
that was one of the largest influencers in the city. It wasn't about taking care of the people. It was like no, and I mean kudos to them. At least defense was, for all intents and purposes, the public reason. Who knows what the real motivation was, or what the bribe was, or anything else in the back doors back then. But I mean it wasn't even about the people. It's never been about the people. It hasn't been for so long.
No,
I mean, the
no,
Affordable Care Act definitely wasn't fucking affordable for anybody, was it?
man, it's so amazing that, and then, but the thing is, going back to the beginning, so when the media changed, when the media and Hollywood a lot like just started, okay, making these starlets, making this, destroying the family, making sex, making, not that there's anything I love, not that you shouldn't be a human being, but the way that they started just glamorizing it, glamorizing it, glamorizing it, and making it so
And
that,
taking away your primal instincts.
yeah, and making it so that, again, people gravitate to it. They sit down to it. They watch it. They've got to know what this person did. What's the key? And it gets more and more and more and more detailed. And then they tell you they slip a little bit in. They influence. Just now they actually call like this new generation of stars. They call them what they are, influencers. It's
Yep.
funny because they don't realize that they're calling. I don't think that they understand, but so that's what movie stars and such have been. They've been influencers and influencing society, and nudging and nudging and nudging and nudging, and then you wonder why we're used to everything. We're used to getting our culture, our belief system, everything. We're used to getting from the television, right? So
Yep.
then you get to something like a pandemic, and people turn to the television to say, "What should I do with this pandemic?" Well, you need to stay home. You need to, and then you have like for those 2 years, man, it was like the Twilight Zone. It was so
Oh,
incredible.
I
It was,
I I
and
didn't know what the fuck to think. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of enjoyed it though.
it, I did. I'm
Because
glad it
it
happened.
slowed down life.
I'm glad it happened. I didn't enjoy it at the time. I'll tell you what. I was in love with this girl, man, and it was how we started was bad. How we started was real bad, and it ended up being the best thing for me. But at the time, it was I don't know. It was real tough. It was so. Just a little background on that. her and I, we got together, and like I said, that was bad, and there was always a bit of I don't know, a little more distance than I wanted. And anyway, so then the pandemic came, and we had always sort of one of the things that we had always been sort of eye to eye. She was always more. She called herself an in the closet libertarian, and it was always more of but a little bit slightly left leaning libertarian, not not like a full on socialist libertarian, but just a little like a Gary Johnson libertarian. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
And I was always, I'm a Ron Paul libertarian, and I'm not. I don't even identify as a libertarian. I'm a voluntarist, but we
Yeah.
were always a little bit on different. But we were always pretty much on the same page, right? And then the pandemic started, and it had gotten to the point where really for her it was just sex anyway, and for me it wasn't. For me, I really was like I would have done. I would have not bought this ranch. I would have. She said, "Hey, just move into the suburbs with me and do this." I would have done that. I would not.
White picket fence,
Yeah,
have some twins and
whatever she
a
wanted.
little yappy dog.
Yeah, I would have done it, and and so but for her by this time it had really just became so we saw each other for a couple hours in the daytime, right, when everybody was at
Yeah.
work. And so then the pandemic happened, and she's like, "Wow, man," she's like, "I'm scared of this," and I was like, I'm not really, but you start talking a little bit, and then we all of a sudden we're not seeing each other anymore. And this is someone who I thought that no matter what, didn't think that maybe we were going to get married and grow up. I thought maybe by this point I could see the score of what it is just we're having a good time. But it was someone that I thought was going to be like my best friend anyway. I thought that for the
Yeah.
rest of my life we would be talking no matter what. I thought maybe she might marry somebody else and I might, but we would always be friends. I thought, and I thought no matter what. And then we sort of had a little bit of a falling out, like not a falling out really. Actually, no, it wasn't a falling out. We had no falling out. We just sort of had to quit because she got scared of the pandemic. And so then like the vaccines came out, and she's like, "Hey, do you want to come over?" Or anyway, the conversation came up out, and I was like, "Well, yeah, of course." And she's like, "Well, have you had your vaccine?" And I was like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "You want me to have a vaccine passport to go?" And that was the last time I talked to her. Literally, I
Yep.
wasn't mean about it. I was like, "Of course I don't have my vaccine." And my point in telling that really ridiculous story is like there were a lot of people that left my life because of my stance on the vaccines. A lot of people. And her being the most important one to me, and all of it worked out best. You find out really who your friends are. You find out how people really truly are.
Yeah.
But what I wonder sometimes, I think about, okay, what we know now is, and what we know undisputably now, like it's not a conspiracy theory anymore. What we know now
Mm-hmm.
is the vaccines at best did no good. Like they helped nobody. And what we also know now is the mask at best caused some harm. Not
Yeah.
like some developmental harm in children, a lot of some harm, but did no good. We know those two things at best. Those are the things now that's starting to come out that the vaccines maybe caused some real problems. And or there's been the rumors and there's been the people saying, hey, this has happened and this has happened and this has happened. But now it's started, like governments are starting to have to leak out, hey, we really
Yep.
did these things. And and um I'm wondering. Okay, so I went through this twilight zone where no matter how much evidence was really there, people just said, "Well, Fauci and the news says this, the TV says this, the TV
Facts.
says this, so you're
Trust the
wrong." Yeah,
science.
trust the science, right? I'm wondering now, those same people, I wonder if they're going to hold on the rest of their life and they're going to get a vaccine every fucking month for the rest of their life because either they're so prideful that they don't want to just say, "You know what, I got duped," or if they are really that fucking brainwashed, if they're really that deep into it, like,
So I would say it's probably the latter. I don't think that you can be so naive to get conned the way that so many people have been conned the last 2 years.
I don't think it can be
And
naivety though, because it was the whole fucking world, man.
well, yeah, but I don't think you can be of that mindset to be conned like that and have enough pride for yourself to go to the point that like I'm not, it's not right. Like you said, I'm gonna go get my shot every month. I don't think that you can be that far off and just still say that you have pride. I mean, maybe they call it pride. Maybe they
Right.
feel like they have pride in themselves for that, but it's not. It comes from a point of,
Yeah.
they refuse to allow themselves to be embarrassed. They refuse to, let themselves acknowledge that they were conned, that they failed, that they misunderstood, and they were wrong.
Right.
And I mean, admitting where you're wrong is one of the hardest things we do as human beings. Communication. I mean, you've heard me use that line before. And communication is the hardest thing we do as human beings. 100% beyond any reasonable doubt. You could be an accountant, you could be, Steve Jobs, and you could be the fucking president, you could be whoever, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you're still a human being, and the hardest thing we do is communicate, because your body language says one thing, your arm, people who talk with their hands, their hands and their body language and everything else is saying one thing, and then their mouth says another. Well, now what do I believe? Body language has told me, like, you, bro, but your mouth said we're cool and we're homies.
Right.
So which one is it, and where are we at? And I mean, I think a lot of that is just it's part of the world we're in. It's part of the we've gotten so comfortable in life and not having to work for shit. And I mean, Christ, you can make double, if not triple, what I was making in high school as a busboy, and when I was 14 years old, and you can make out flipping burgers at McDonald's in most states now. Like,
Right.
now, granted, it's necessary because of inflation. I kind of get it, but
Yeah.
at the same time, like, like, what the shit, bro? I remember growing up, and like we were talking about with MTV in the '90s and shit. Rolling in that Mercedes fucking C class that cost 30 grand, and you were a baller, bro.
Right.
Like, you had money. 30 grand now, shit. I can't even go buy a 5-year-old used car with less than 100,000 miles for under 30 grand.
Fuck no, 30 grand. Hey, I know we actually both got meetings, so we need to end this up pretty soon. Before I go, did you hear about the My Pillow guy getting raided by the FBI last night?
Oh, who got raided?
What's his name? The My Pillow guy, the Trump supporter. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, the My Pillow dude, the one that allegedly has got all this like voter fraud information and
Yeah.
all this other stuff from the 20. Yeah. I know. I did not know he got raided. I saw some memes today when I was
Yeah.
on lunch at work.
It's pretty
No, I
scary,
did not see
man.
that he got raided.
It's pretty scary, to be honest with you. Obviously, I'm not a Trump supporter, but there
Well, no,
is.
he's the one who signed all the damn bills to fucking let the money printer go into fucking
Yeah,
full
yeah.
time